The villagers say you can still hear their cries in the night. They never found their bodies. It all started with King Mosi. He ruled over our land with an iron fist, his name whispered with fear. We lived under his cruel gaze for years, but it was one night that changed everything. I was young then, just a boy. We were told not to go near the king's palace after dark, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see what lay behind those high walls. That night, I sneaked out, heart pounding, and slipped into the palace grounds. The moon was bright, casting eerie shadows. I hid behind a large tree, my eyes glued to the palace's window. What I saw made my blood run cold. King Mosi was in the grand hall. He was chanting in a language I didn't understand, his voice low and rhythmic. Around him were dozens of people, all bound and silent, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. They were villagers from our town, people who had vanished over the past few months. The king held a strange, carved knife. He moved towards one of the captives, a woman with tears streaming down her face. As the knife came down, I could hear her scream. It was a sound I'll never forget. The room seemed to fill with a dark, heavy energy. I was too terrified to move. I watched as King Mosi performed a ritual, his movements precise and methodical. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to grow darker. I saw him take something from each victim, their essence, their very life force, and put it into a bowl. The whole thing was so unreal, I couldn't believe my eyes. The screams of the victims echoed through the night, mingling with the king's chant. I knew I had to get away. I ran, stumbling over roots and branches, my heart racing. I didn't stop until I was safely back in my village, breathless and trembling. The next day, I told the elders what I had seen. They were horrified but didn't act. They feared the king's wrath. No one spoke of it again. The villagers continued to disappear, and the king's power only grew. I still hear the screams sometimes. They haunt my dreams. And every time I see a full moon, I wonder how many others are still trapped behind those palace walls, their voices lost in the night. The years have passed, but the memory of that night remains vivid. I've grown older, and the weight of that night has followed me through life. I've tried to forget, to bury the horrors of that night beneath layers of time and routine, but the ghost never truly rests. The king's reign eventually came to an end. One day, as swiftly as he had risen to power, King Mosi was overthrown. Rumors spread that a coalition of neighboring kingdoms, tired of his tyranny and dark practices, had united to depose him. The palace was stormed, and Mosi was taken away, never to be seen again. In the aftermath, the palace was abandoned. We watched as nature slowly began to reclaim the once feared fortress, vines crawling over its stone walls and birds nesting in its shattered windows. Some of the villagers ventured into the ruins, searching for any signs of the missing, but the palace had become a place of utter desolation. The stench of death still lingered, a grim reminder of the atrocities committed within its walls. Despite the king's disappearance, the echoes of that night never truly faded. Some say the cries of the victims can still be heard if you listen closely enough on moonlit nights. They say the palace grounds are cursed, haunted by the souls of those who were sacrificed, their spirits trapped between worlds, forever seeking release. I moved away from the village, trying to escape the ghost of my past. I found a small, quiet town where I could live in peace, or so I hoped. Yet, even here, the nightmares persist. The screams pierce my dreams, and the faces of the lost haunt my waking moments. Sometimes, on clear nights when the moon is full and the shadows stretch long, I find myself wondering if the cries are real or just the echoes of my own guilt and fear. I wonder if any of the victims' souls found peace or if they are still trapped, forever calling out for help. As an old man now, I know the truth of what happened, but no one else does. I carry the burden of that night alone, and though the village has moved on, the shadow of King Mosi and his dark rituals lingers in my heart. The palace is gone, but the screams of the past remain, a chilling reminder of the darkness that once ruled our land. And so, every full moon, when the night is clear and the winds are still, I listen for those cries. I hope for a sign that they have found peace, but deep down, I fear that the echoes of that night will never truly fade, for they are bound to me as much as I am to them.